I recently had a comment on my video regarding the ex-Christians I don't think so response video. The person wrote, "Sorry, you were never a Christian. Satan knows the Bible too. This does not make him a Christian. After listening to you even further, I can only conclude that you were never a Christian. At best, you are just a good liar. God is not sending anyone to hell. They, like you, are choosing to go. So go, and good riddance." I responded with this. The fact that you can claim to have the love of Jesus and still say good riddance to people burning in agonizing hell for eternity shows that you don't get love or empathy at all and are truly a horrible person. His entire comment sums up the apathy some Christians have for their fellow human beings. First off, if Satan is lying to us, then we are making a decision based off false information, which eliminates our free will. We are making the best decision based on the evidence we are presented with. We aren't willingly being rebellious. So it's either Satan lying or us using free will and rebelling. Make up your mind. Secondly, Jesus was hanging out with tax collectors, prostitutes, and sinners. He was washing the wounds of lepers and spending his time around beggars. People were judging him, and he said, "They who are whole have no need of a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Mark 2:17 and Luke 5:31. Almost all Christians that I know kind of isolate themselves to their community and church. A church is a place where the majority of people are saved, not us unsaved heathens. If Christians are like Christ, then they should be going to the sinners as well. Christians should all view themselves as doctors to the sick or unsaved if they truly want to emulate Jesus. And if you don't feel like you can, well, that's too dang bad. That's the calling that your book says you have. And being judgmental and angry with the sick for being sick is the worst way to help them. The number of times Jesus had compassion for sinners mentioned is staggering. Saying good riddance since we're choosing to go to hell means that you really have nothing in common with your proclaimed Lord. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Anyone? So, if you're supposed to be doctors, well, what does a doctor do to correct our understanding and confusion? Well, for one thing, you have to study your own beliefs. A doctor is constantly studying, and if you're not studying, then you fail at being like Jesus. Secondly, a doctor listens, really listens to what the other person has to say, so they can discover the problem, the mechanism of the disease, or the misunderstanding or error in their logic or knowledge. To find the source of a lie, you must quietly listen and put yourself in their shoes. I had to do this all the time with my students. Once I untangle the misunderstanding and correct the underlying error in their knowledge, they could easily grasp what I was saying. A therapist mostly just listens while the patient talks. I know it's much easier to just shout and condemn us for our beliefs, but this is exactly why you are turned off by the stereotypical angry atheist. It's like giving the patient the drug you want to give them, whether it's the actual disease being treated. Most atheists see that you really aren't listening to us, as you just continue to repeat the same bad arguments over and over again, many of which we think should be apparent that they are blatant lies, be they straw men or quote mining. I know for a fact that what I was taught about creationism was a complete and direct lie, and it wasn't until I got to college that I actually learned what scientists understood about evolution. If the truth is really what you seek, then you really need to listen to us when we correct you about what we think. If you are failing to reach someone, you need to change your techniques. A doctor who continues to try the same thing over and over again when it's not working will have their license removed. James said, "If anyone asks wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given you." You have all the wisdom you need by asking for it. So this kind of change in your approach should be fairly simple for you if you just ask God. Another thing that doctors do is to experiment and test approaches. If a doctor can't get people to exercise, quit smoking, or eat healthier, they don't give up, but they also do studies and try and figure out ways to make it easier for people to be more healthy and use their own psychology to save them from themselves. Being judgmental or angry with them just makes them less likely to want to do something, and you fail completely if you use this approach with us and ruin any chance you had at witnessing to us. You also have this confusion that the existence of God is apparent to everyone, we just choose to deny it. I've talked to students whose math teachers seem to think that math should be apparent to them as well, and called them stupid for it. Negative memories get dumped faster than positive ones, so these people dumped and gave up on math completely. I'm fully aware that evolution and natural selection is not obvious, just like math, because there's a lot to know. But if patience occurs and I actually listen to my audience, I can fix their error in logic. Also, I might be giving confusing information, or might actually be wrong on something. Learning anything is difficult as it requires effort of both teacher and the student. There are 3 parts to getting someone to learn and accept what you have to say. First is raise awareness of the issue. You Christians do that quite well. We are fully aware of what you have to say. However, you stop at that. Science is very bad at raising awareness, as there are tons of discoveries and evidence for evolution that most people are completely unaware of. Second is to give them a reason to learn. I constantly had to give real-world explanations of how my students were going to use the math I was teaching in the new chapter, or else they really didn't care. They will still learn it, but if it isn't relevant to them, they will not work really as hard to learn it, and will probably brain dump it upon exiting the class. Learning can sometimes also cause lifestyle or emotional inconvenience. People do not want to change unless they feel it's imperative. If your threat of hell, which has no evidence other than your ancient book, does not sound logical to us, that will not be enough to convince us to believe in your God. The first shopping cart required paid people to go around the store pretending to shop to show why they could be so useful and improve their life. Before that, no one would use them, even though they were available, because it required change. Insulting us won't make it apparent that your life is at all improved by your beliefs. You will seem just as or less moral than us. Both science and religion fail at making our arguments relevant on a large scale. Science mostly because science spending is so limited that they are too busy doing science and there is not enough time or money to educate the public. When people don't accept what is said, many scientists get frustrated because for them it's so obvious that the study is done. However, time is limited and people will only study what they think is relevant. If I link you to a video that I think will convince you that God isn't real, how many of you Christians will actually go watch or read it? Only those looking for a fight or a challenge, right? You believe you have so much to learn about your God that you don't want to waste your precious time or brains on our garbage. Why do you think that telling us to read the Bible, go to church, or read a book will convince us that if we just read it, we'll actually be convinced? We have stuff to do. Science has so much to learn. Why should we bother once again reading or hearing yet another almost certainly 100% unconvincing argument because it's the same one that has been repeated to us over and over again? There are entire fields of science I have yet to learn about, and I will probably have read thousands of books, journals, and articles by the time I die. Only 10% of you can even get through your book all the way. You have to give us a good reason to do so. Religion fails mostly once again because they fail to listen to what we have to say. The last part involves actual teaching. Once they have accepted your premise, you can move on. We both have this down pat with both churches and universities. Doctors are also not scared to be among the sick. They are around them every day with extremely dangerous diseases, but they're not scared. They have to use aseptic technique and correct precautions, but to actually figure out a treatment, they have to understand the sickness intimately, down to the last detail. If our disbelief is a sickness, then you fail as doctors because you keep repeating the same crap and refuse to try different approaches. Church for you is like being a doctor who spends all of his time at the gym instead of the hospital, being around healthy people instead of the sick. If you're so worried about being infected by our atheism by not actually listening to us, well then maybe your God and faith are not powerful enough to protect you from our logic. If hell is real and the Bible is true, then you're not trying hard enough, and your fear of us going to hell is not strong enough because your empathy is not powerful enough. You fail to act like Jesus, a gentle teacher and a doctor of the soul, something you have also failed to convince us of existing.